sa dhe vetë, gjithmonë të shkurtra, po gjithnjë të frutshme, Zoti Swoboda, eurodeputet, kryetari i grupit, Komuniteti Evropian është një strukturë akt të shënueshëm në zhvillimet globale. Natyrisht, ju e kuptoni dhe gjithkush e di që ecuria e tij është drejt Shteteve të Bashkuara të Europës. Ide e cila në dallim dhe në kundërshtim nga idetë ekstremiste të majta po djathta dykushme që është e pamundur, me sa duket është e mundur dhe drejt kësaj strukture Komuniteti Evropian do të tentojë. Natyrisht, kjo është një rrugë e cila, siç duket, shoqërohet me shumë sfida, disa prej cilave po i përjetojmë edhe ne, dhe ndërkohë sfidat të cilat nuk i kanë shpëtuar vëmendjes, vërejtjes, studimeve të profesoratit të Universitetit Marin Barleti. Sfida të cilat nuk i kanë shpëtuar gjithashtu dhe interesit të studentëve tanë të shkëlqyer, të cilët ne i përgatisim jo vetëm për të ardhmen e Shqipërisë, por i përgatisim për edhe vazhdimësinë e parlamentarizmit evropian, sepse ata do të jenë përfaqësuesit tanë në të ardhmen në këtë parlament. Lidhur me këtë, gjykoj që biseda e sotme do të jetë e rëndësishme, interesante, por dhe e bukur. Atëre më lejoni që përptimi interesant të sondëm të jap fjalën intelektual, deputet, mik, po themi institucionit tonë, informuar në të njëjtën ombrellë me disa prej nesh në mënyrë të veçantë me mua në të njëjtin fakultet.
Mr. Rector, deans, professors, dear students, and how many people were coming tonight on a Sunday. When you see all the restaurants and the bars outside, it's very, very exciting that you are here, maybe after you go to the restaurants. But let me just briefly present myself. I was elected to European Parliament from Austria, my country, in the first time in 1996. Some of you have been very small at that time. And I was, from the beginning, vice president of the Socialist group, and since 2012, vice president of a group which is called Socialist and Democrats group. Maybe strange in a country where on the one side there are socialists, on the other side the Democrats. With us, it is that we are in one group together. From the beginning, I had the clear opinion Europe has to grow together. It's not only about that those countries who are in Europe, in the sense of European Union, that they should be strengthened, but all European countries have the right to join the European Union. That is a fundamental, because there's not a better European Union, a worse European Union, the one are good, the other bad, or not as good. No, every country has the right to join. I was with the city of Vienna, in the city government of Vienna, when in '89 the Iron Curtain fell. I remember very well I was sitting and we had a big rally about planning for the future, when I got a sheet of paper and it was said the border between Austria and then Czechoslovakia, the country where Liberucci came, is open. Liberucci could tell us something because he had to flee from the then Czechoslovakia, and he came to Austria and was hopefully well received. But anyway, he made his studies there and started to work. But this was the time many of you don't know because you are too young and you are happy. You can be happy that you don't know the times as it was. But there was a real Iron Curtain. I was born 5 or 6 miles away from the Iron Curtain. Happily on the free side of the Iron Curtain and not on the other side. It could have been totally different. And therefore it was for me important that we say to every citizen, especially for the younger generation, it's our Europe, all our Europe, not only for some people. And then, still in my capacity as member of the city government, I got a call from the then ambassador of Albania, or the Austrian ambassador in Albania. The city of Tirana wants some help and support in planning, in new planning of the development of Tirana. I came here with some experts. Again, you don't know how Albania or how Tirana looked like at that time. But I went into the offices. I saw that the minimum of instruments, of computers were not existing. And so we tried to help. But from the first beginning, from the first time I came to Albania, in some way I fell into love with this country and his people, because I saw here the willingness to change the society and to go forward and to look for Europe for help and support. Not all the politicians did it, I must say, critical also to politicians, but many of them wanted to do something. But also they had to learn how to make modern politics. Not everybody in the West does know it, so don't be too ashamed, but many of the people here didn't know how to do it. I never did hide my political allegiance to the social democratic movement, but I tried always to be fair and to cooperate with all politicians in order to bring the country forward. Because this is something where I hope that it has been well developed in this country, that you are the left and you are the right. But for some issues you have to work together to bring the country forward. I've been here election observers. I've been very often after the elections. And after each elections, there were big quarrels and big fights. I was also vice president of the delegation of the European Parliament for the whole region. And it was always when they came, they were friendly and nice to each other, but after 2 or 3 hours, they were fighting each other. And we always told them, first of all, Albania must have free and fair election. It is not possible that after each election, there's a big fight about failures, about incorrectness and cheating and whatever. And secondly, yes, you have to fight politically, but in a way where you always have in mind there's one big aim, and that is joining the European Union, going forward to the European Union. Not that it's a paradise, I will come to that later. It's not a paradise, not at all, but it's the only chance to develop the society in a modern, transparent way. Because without that push, and this was also true for my country, Austria, without that push, without that new rules, it is not possible. You don't do it from yourself alone. So I'm very happy, and I will, of course, meet the Prime Minister, but I will also meet the new leader of the Democrat Party here. I'm happy that, and I feel that a new era has started after the last election. An area where, of course, there are different opinions. That's democracy. If there would be no different opinion, there was no democracy. I don't want to show back, but you know from your own history, there were times there was no different opinion legally, and there was no democracy. But a cooperation in the sense that you understand each other, that you don't fight in the parliament. Neither you shoot yourself or you're somebody, nor you kick him. You just have arguments, and you have open discussion. This is very necessary for bringing the society forward. You don't bring a society forward if you don't have open, transparent discussions. So I hope, and this would be my first statement, so to say, that this is not a change in Albania, because this brings you forward. The fight against corruption, which is absolutely necessary in all the countries. There are no countries, my assistant asked me today, do you think one ever can beat corruption? You never will beat it totally. But you can have a real progress, and you have to have. How do you want to invite investors to come into the country? Good investors. If they always have to fear to pay there, and always have to fear, I didn't pay enough, or I didn't pay the right one. So this is very important to fight against corruption as one of the elements for bringing also modern economy and modern investors into the country. Again, I always say it's not only in Albania or in Bosnia-Herzegovina or something else. No, it is in all the countries, but it has to be at a minimum. Look at the example of Italy. Italy, you have two states. You have the north and the south. In the south, you still have a lot of corruption, and you have mafia structures, and you see that the south in Italy is not well developed because it is still not, has not been successful in the fight against corruption, in the fight against mafia structures. So there's not something I mention here because I want to accuse Albania. No, I know it is absolutely important. And it is also absolutely important that it is not partisan. The fight against corruption cannot be used to fight the other political party and say, we are clean, the others not. And that was sometimes in the past. That is, we fight strongly against corruption, but you always meant the other political group and never somebody from your own political family. And also that is, I think, very, very important. Now, how to proceed, what should be done? First of all, I was disappointed, I must say, I was disappointed that the December Council did not give the starting sign for negotiations with Albania for accession talks. What were the reasons? Well, it was already mentioned, the question of accession fatigue. And one had to promise, or had already promised Serbia to go forward to say thank you to Serbia that they were helpful now a bit in the relations with Kosovo, which is an important subject. And one didn't want to give too many signals to the region. I think it was bad. I think the Council should have decided, yes, we start with Serbia, but we also start with Albania. Because it is important to say to the citizens of Albania and the politicians, when you do a good job, when you come forward, when you are united on your stance about Europe, then we will take seriously your policy and seriously proceed with accession negotiations. I hope that in June this can be done. In any way, I think this year must be decided to start negotiations about accession with Albania. It is not easy. It became more and more difficult. I was rapporteur of the European Parliament for Croatia from the beginning to the end of negotiations. I said I want to do one thing to bring the next country of the Balkan region into the European Union. And it was successful. Why was it successful? Again, what I said before, because Croatia had many differences between the socialist and the party of the right wing. But on European issues, they tried to find a common ground. And they did a lot in fighting corruption. They did a lot in involving a modern state, a modern administration. Something you have to do, you who study here, you who teach here, but you who study here, to think about what is a modern state doing, an efficient state, a state which is answering to the citizens' need. This is, I think, a very, very important. It's one of the main elements in Croatia was the non-functioning administration. And we said you have to reform your administration. You have to reform your judiciary. And of course, including the fight against corruption. And as Croatia proceeded in that, they were successful. And this is the same true for Albania. Now we are more and more strict. Why? Because we saw in two cases with Romania and Bulgaria that the job was not done sufficiently before joining European Union. Once you are in European Union, it is very difficult because the pressure is not here. Of course we have pressure, even pressure now in Romania and Bulgaria, and a lot of pressure in Hungary, but you are not strong enough when you are already a member in a club. The other colleagues are not strong enough and severe enough to say you have to do your job. And therefore I said also to the Croatian politicians, be happy that we demand from you the reforms before you join, because afterwards you will have it much more difficult. You have friends whom you maybe make angry if you demand something from him. So politicians are also only men and women, human beings. If the pressure from the outside, and if as a prime minister you can say, I have to do that reform, even if you don't like it, but otherwise we don't join the European Union, it's different than you say, we have to do the reform, and then the guy says, well, the next time I won't vote for you if you demand that from me. So it is very, very important to do all the reforms before. Is it fun to go into the European Union? No, it's not. And we are in a crisis. We should not deny that the European Union is in a crisis. I will try to outline some elements why I think we are in a crisis. But again, without European Union, you cannot come forward. We are the biggest economic market, modern developed market worldwide. Of course, you have China is even a bigger market, but it's not as developed for modern products as it is. If you want to have economic success, and we spoke here with Lee Baruchik on the way here, why are not more companies coming and investing here and they invest in China? Because it's not yet, you are not yet member of European Union, not clear enough that you will be in 1 or 2 or 3 years. And therefore the market is very limited. And therefore unfortunately, many companies say, well, let's go to China, there's a big market and cheap labor. Here you have also relatively cheap labor to some of European countries, but you have qualified people here. It's very good that you have that university to qualify people. But it's not yet the big market. If you come here, you don't have a big market yet. Not in the sense you have when you are in European Union. Therefore, joining European Union economically is very important. Secondly, as I said before, and it's not easy because we have a big fight with Hungary. You have heard about that because we think that Mr. Orban, the Prime Minister in Hungary, made some of the policies and some of the legislation which is not up to European standard, but still we push for European standards. We push for respecting European laws, which are laws for a modern society. Of course, you can have always an interpretation which laws are the most important and have to be respected by everybody, and which laws can be different in different countries. But overall, the principles of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of European Union, which give you some fundamental rights. This is the Charter which is the basis of joining European Union. So I think everybody of you who is starting European studies or make European studies or study in law will know how important for us in European Union, European laws and the respect for European laws is. So this is, again, if you want to promote citizens' rights, equality between men and women, minority rights, all these elements are very important for us in Europe, because we know if you attack human rights, minority rights, sexual rights, whatever, this is not democracy. Democracy means respect for individual and collective rights, and that, therefore I think it's very important to join European Union, but also very important that if you join, you know what kind of community you join. It's not only an economic union, it's also a union of values. Values play an important role. Not values in the sense of, let's say, dictated values from above, but values we were fighting for. If you look to Europe and to your own country, how important it was to fight for values, democratic values, not set by somebody as chief of a communist party, but values democratically elaborated. I think that is also very important. European Union is not only an economic union, it is a union of values. The last point, because I think it should be more discussion and question and answers and remarks from your side. Yes, we are in a crisis. We're in a crisis because we have very high unemployment, and we as Socialists and Democrats attack the majority of governments and European Commission that they do not enough for economic growth. If you do not enough for economic growth, you will have unemployment. And it is unacceptable that we have member countries of the European Union, member countries of the Eurozone, which have an unemployment rate for young people over 50%, like in Greece and in Spain, and partly now also in Croatia. To have such a high unemployment rate is not acceptable. If the younger generation starts their job with unemployment, without a job. And this is why we as a political group think much more has to be done to create jobs. You will ask where the money comes from. We asked for a study, independent study, and that independent study demonstrated that 1,000 billion of euro, 1 trillion, nobody probably can imagine it, but 1,000 billion of euros are not going to the tax authorities every year because of tax evasion, tax havens, to Switzerland, to the Bahamas, to wherever. The rich are it. And as far as I heard, President Obama in his speech will underline that in the next days, how the inequality between rich and poor was growing. And in many of our countries, inequality between the rich and the poor was growing, especially with income or wealth. And this is not acceptable. And this is one problem of our society. It's also an economic problem, not only a social problem. And therefore, I think we have really to change economic policies, to make it clear that we want to invest, we want to take at least part of the money which is not going into taxes for the state, but going to tax paradises, fiscal paradises, that part of the money is coming back and has to be paid. We see it very clearly in your neighbor Greece. When we see in Greece how the rich one, or many of the rich, took their money out of the country instead of investing in the country itself. If you allow that the money goes somewhere else, because on the financial market you get a lot of more profit than perhaps investing in the country, then you will come in a disaster in Greece. I was in the last days in Athens and then in Saloniki, and you know Saloniki and the areas where many of also Albanians are. I don't know what the situation is. They told me not many Albanians go back. But of course the Albanians who are there, they suffer also from the unemployment. And therefore it's also in your neighborhood very, very important to get Greece along, to get, but Greece can only get along, can only grow if other countries grow as well. Because many of the companies I met, young entrepreneurs, they say we have to go into export because at home we cannot sell our products, or at least not enough. And there we have to go into our exports, and that is also very important that we get a growth policy in the European Union. Now really coming to the last point. The European Union, you know, is existing out of three main institutions: the European Commission, the European Council, and the European Parliament. We in the European Parliament, with the Treaty of Lisbon, got additional competences. And so we are quite strong on many of the elements, not everywhere, but in many of the elements we're quite strong, and we are quite making some problems for the Council, for the ministers, because they want to decide. I think we decided, just confirm it. And we say we are not here to confirm what you decided, we're here to discuss with you what could be the real solution for the future. Like the so-called banking union at the moment, that means the support for the banks who are failing and how we deal with the banking system, because the banks in Europe, and you see it even here, if I see Raiffeisen Bank and other banks, the banks in Europe are not only in one country. They're all over Europe. And it doesn't make sense to solve banking problems only in one country. And therefore we from the Parliament are very strongly fighting for European solutions. Not an addition of 28 member country solution, but European common solution. Because we only can defend ourselves together. in the international market. Only together we can control the financial market. And therefore, I think that is very important that we go in that direction. Now, on the 25th, around the 25th, not in every country, this exactly the same day, we will have elections to the European Union, Parliament. But for the first time, we want this election not only to go for European Parliament, but to go also for the President of the European Commission. It's like at the last election when Mr. Rama was candidate, Mr. Berisha were candidate. They were not running for the Parliament alone. They wanted to be Prime Minister. And so the next European election also must be a competition between personalities who want to be Prime Minister. It was already mentioned that Martin Schulz, the present President of the European Parliament, runs for the Social Democrats to be the next Commission President. The European People's Party has not yet decided. Maybe Mr. Juncker, the ex-Prime Minister of Luxembourg. With the Liberal Party, it will be Mr. Verhofstadt, who was Prime Minister some time ago in Belgium and is now leader of the Liberals in the Parliament. So the first time this European Parliament election will have an additional value, not only running for the European Parliament, but also the top candidates will say, I want to be President of the Commission. And with this, we hope that some of our citizens will say, well, if I go to the polling station, I'm not only deciding about how the European Parliament should be formed, but I will also decide who should be the next President of the European Commission. And that is, I think, to make it strong, because many of our citizens doubt now, what about Europe? How is it strong enough? Is it doing enough for me? I will say, well, look at the countries who are not yet in the European Union. They know how the European Union is important for them and what is necessary that they can join. So in that sense, my message to you, and I'm open to any questions and remarks from your side, of course, is yes, we believe with all the problems we have.
Ne politikanët shqiptar duhet flasim sa më pak në këto kohë pas zgjedhjeve dhe të punojmë më shumë, ndërkohë që nuk do doja t'ju merrja shumë kohë dhe t'ja kaloja fjalën presidentit të grupit Socialistëve dhe Demokratëve në Parlamentin Evropian, zoti Swoboda, një mik i shuar i Shqipërisë, sepse në mënyrë të vazhdueshme dhe në momente të vështira madje gjithmonë ka mbështetur rrugën e Shqipërisë drejt progresit të vet, në drejtim të antarësimit në Bashkimin Evropian. Do doja gjithashtu të prezantoja dhe të falenderoja në emrin tuaj edhe zëvendës presidentin e grupit Socialistë dhe Demokratë në Parlamentin Evropian, zotin Ruçek, i cili gjithashtu është një mik i madh i Shqipërisë, sepse për një kohë të gjatë ka shërbyer si raportues në Parlamentin Evropian për Shqipërinë dhe në raportet e miratuara dhe në rezolutat e miratuara nga Parlamenti Evropian gjithmonë ka qenë fryma mbështetëse në aspiratën tonë integruese. Sigurisht që ajo që do doja t'ju thoja sot studentëve të Universitetit Marin Barleti është që le ta shfrytëzojnë këtë moment komunikimi me një përfaqësues kaq të lartë Parlamentit Evropian, sepse grupi Socialistë dhe Demokratë është një ndër dy grupet më të mëdha sot në Parlamentin Evropian. Shpresoj si parti si motor e këtij grupi në Shqipëri, në emër të Partisë Socialiste të Shqipërisë, që Partia Socialistëve Evropian në maj të këtij viti në zgjedhjet europiane të ketë një rezultat po aq pozitiv sikurse edhe e majta në Shqipëri në zgjedhjet e fundit, me qëllim që më pas zgjedhjeve europiane një figurë tjetër e shuar shumë mbështetës ndaj Shqipërisë, zoti Martin Schulz, që është kandidatura zyrtare e Socialistëve dhe Demokratëve Europian në zgjedhjet europiane për president komisionit, të marrin mbështetjen e qytetarëve europian për të qenë presidenti i Komisionit Evropian. E pra, le të jenë zgjedhjet europiane, le të jetë procesi integrimit të Shqipërisë, le të jetë ajo që quhet sot enlargement fatigue, apo le të themi një lloj ngadalësimi i procesit integrimit evropian për disa vende, për shkak se disa vende antarë të Bashkimit Evropian mendojnë që procesi duhet heci më ngadalë, disa prej objektit të pyetjeve të studentëve shumë të shkëlqyer të Universitetit Marin Barleti. Faleminderit.
The message is very, very clear. All the countries of Europe have the right to join the European Union. Macedonia, or Montenegro, wherever, but of course especially Albania, and you, that the next years will show that your strength, your determination, your...
7 years ago, I was part of Albanian Youth delegation in the European Commission, while we were the stage of this new stage of Europe, Albania strategy to move steps forward in Europe integration. Thank you.
If others have still to think about that. Say we have problems in Europe because we did enlarge too quickly. The issue is migration, or is the right of citizens of Europeans no more caring about it. Of course, maybe for some when you join the Eurozone, then let's say the level of
Parlamentit Evropian ndodhet sonde midis nesh. Më lejoni që emrin tuaj ta falenderoj zotrin për prezencën e tij.
in European member countries to say, look, join the Euro. Now we negotiate first of all about joining European Union, and
also on the challenges of the European project. I think now
then people who have no chance at home, who have no job at home, they say, well, and now the